Welcome to this contact webinar. Before we start, I'm going to go through some housekeeping. If there's a technical hitch, please do bear with us. If you're joining by a PC, laptop, tablet or smartphone, you should be able to see this introduction slide. There are a lot of attendees today, so it's not practical for us to have verbal questions as we go through. If you do want to ask a question at any point, you should see an icon on the bottom of your webinar toolbar. Please press on this, and if you type in your question, then the webinar administrator will be able to pass it on to us, and we will answer as many questions as we possibly can at the end of the webinar. If we don't have time to cover all of your questions, then we'll try and get to them after the webinar and try to contact you afterwards. At the end of the webinar, a very short questionnaire will launch, and it's really helpful if you can complete this for us, as it helps us to develop future webinars and let us know what works and what doesn't work. So with the housekeeping done, I should introduce myself, I suppose. My name is Maroon Sisodia. I'm the East of England Steering Group representative for the National Network of Parent Carer Forums, and as of the last couple of months, I'm also the co-chair for the NNPCF Steering Group. And I'm joined today by my colleague Lara.
Good afternoon, Maroon, thank you. My name is Lara Roberts, and I am the South East rep for the National Network of Parent Carer Forums Steering Group member, but I'm also the communications lead for the Steering Group. And
please bear with Lara and me today, because although it may sound seamless, we're actually 150 miles apart, so we're not in the same room delivering this. So if there are a few glitches, please bear with us. So this webinar is titled NNPCF Strategy, and this one in particular, this is one of two. I'll talk more about the second one later. And this webinar is focused on our vision, our mission, our objectives, and our priorities. So, as you all are probably aware, the future is uncertain at the moment, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But since February this year, the NNPCF Steering Group, we've been thinking a great deal about the future of the organisation, and we've held a series of workshops between March and July, and we've looked to create a very clear strategy for the organisation for the next 5 years. Essentially, we've taken the view that making like an ostrich and burying our heads in the sand is not an option. Instead, we've been listening, we've been looking, we've been learning. And in particular, we've really reached out, or tried to reach out to our membership and our stakeholders to co-produce this strategy with you, and we'll talk a great deal about how we've done that. So the model we've got is very much meerkat, not ostrich. And we need your help, we need your participation in what happens next. Our steering group members have been keeping their regional meetings up to date with the work that we've been doing, and this webinar is intended to summarize that work and engage you very actively in some things where we need your input. So the contents for today are, firstly, we're going to talk about why do we need to review our strategy. Next up, we're actually going to talk to you about our vision and our mission. After that, we'll talk about our objectives and our priorities, and then finally, we'll give you a brief of our thoughts on what happens next. So, this slide gives an overview of our strategy, and essentially, we see that there are three main components to it. Firstly is the vision and mission, and secondly, objectives and priorities. These two sections we're going to cover today in a webinar. The third, which you'll see grayed out on this slide, our organisation structure, we're not going to talk about that today, but we're going to be holding a separate webinar on that on the 18th of October, which Maureen Morris, the other NNPCF co-chair, and myself will be presenting.
So why do we need to review our strategy? Well, I think for us as the steering group, we've reflected that we've been an organisation since 2011, and we understand that it's a few years behind the local parent carer forums who started in 2008. But what we've done and we've heard and recognised is this need to review our strategy because of certain factors, such as the Children and Families Act 2014, but also the Care Act as well of 2015. And we just felt that this was the right time to review because of all these above factors, as well as what our members have been saying to us for the last year. So when we need to do this review, what we've done is we've heard over the last year, as I said before, that our members have told us that we need a bit of clarity on how we work and what we do as the NNPCF steering group. So we felt the strategy should enable you to have a clear idea of the vision, and that you as our members are able to articulate to your members how the NNPCF works and what we do as the steering group at a national level, at a regional level, as well as a local level.
So onto the main content of our first section, our vision and mission. So this is really explaining what we do, how we do it, who we do it for, and why we do it. And that really is what this slide says, that a good vision and a mission for an organization really needs to answer these 4 questions. And so let's take you through the work that we've been doing, but probably start with, where are we now?
So if you think what our current constitution says, and this was developed a few years ago, it kind of looks at our aims and objectives as the NNPCF. So the aims of the NNPCF are to ensure the voices of parent carers are heard nationally and with departmental and strategic partners across education, health and social care. But the other element to our aims, of course, is that we empower and support parent carer participation develops across England. If you look at our objectives, we're also there to promote parent carer participation at a local and regional national level, and to share good practice and to learn from each other, and to facilitate support relevant to the participation agenda. So those are our current objectives, but we felt as a steering group that, you know, in 2017 we need to look at, through this strategy, at what parent carer participation is in this year, and we have reflected to our members this. Okay,
so this is probably one of the most important slides in the deck, and let me talk through this in detail. And one of our principles here was, in doing this work, was clearly co-production. Our review starts and finishes with you, our membership. So let me talk you through what we've done. And firstly, we started with our membership. So you'll see the little icons at the bottom of the multicolored people talking. That's where we've actually gone and sought our membership approved input. And at the top, you'll see the line for the NNPCF, the work that we've done. So we started with what our membership was telling us. So we did a survey around what our membership thought was important, what words our membership thought was important when it came to a vision and a mission. And that survey was run in, I believe, February and March of this year. We then actually went and we pulled your aims and objectives. So we went and asked our member forums and what their actual constitution said about what their aims and objectives were, and we've compiled that. And lastly, of course, we talked to you. We then went on and we drafted a vision and a mission document based upon what you had told us was important. And we held a workshop in early March where we actually pulled together a first cut of our vision and mission. Next up, stage 3, we went out and we reviewed this with our membership. So regional steering group members shared it with their regional meetings, and we got some really, really excellent feedback on that, which I'll share with you. And so we went and took that feedback and we redrafted it. And That's what we're showing. What's what we're sharing with you today, the redraft of the our vision and our mission. And in order for us to move forward with this vision and mission needs to be formally adopted by a vote at our conference. And we're going to be talking to you a little bit about how we do that. So stepping through the survey that we did, we actually asked people what words were most important to you. And this slide here shows you the results of that survey. About a third of the forums responded, which gave us a really good representative sample for a survey. So thank you for those who did respond to that. Moving on, I said we pulled out your own aims and objectives from your own constitutions. And again, about a third of forums responded. And this word map shows those words that were most frequently used in the constitutions of our member forums. And again, we used these words and we reflected these words when we were thinking about framing our own, the NNPCF's vision and mission statement. And we used that in conjunction with conversations with you. So we have each one of the steering group members had conversations with individual forums and at regional meetings about what was important to come up with this first draft. And let me just skim through it very quickly for you. Our first draft said the NNPCF is the parent-carer-led organisation or the independent national voice of parent-carer forums. Parent-carer forums are representative local groups of parents and carers of children and young people with special education needs and disability who work alongside education, health and other service providers to ensure that services they plan, commission, deliver and monitor meet the needs of children and families to deliver better outcomes and more effective services for families living with SEND. We aspire to the best possible opportunities in the future for all children and young people with SEND and their families through a culture of participation and co-production. We do this by working with and influencing partners across education, health, social care and the voluntary sector. We co-produce with our member forums to ensure their voices are heard at a regional and a national level. We empower parent-carer forums and inspire strategic partners across the country by sharing good practice and knowledge. That was our first draft. We shared that with you and you gave us some very strong feedback, which was essentially you agreed with the fundamental vision we were laying out. Nobody came back and told us that we were going in the wrong direction or they disagreed with what we were saying. However, you told us you just didn't like the language, you didn't like the drafting. It wasn't inspirational. We got very clear feedback that people weren't clear which bit was the vision and which bit was the mission. And frankly, one of the reasons I read it out was to emphasize that you're absolutely right, that it was too wordy and it needed to be sharper. And some of our members actually helped us rewrite it. They actually wrote in and suggested different language, different sections, different wording. And when we redrafted it, we relied very heavily upon your suggestions, upon the redrafting that some of our members had done for us. So the final draft, the second draft, is this. The National Network of Parent-Carer Forums is the independent national voice of parent-carer forums. Our mission is to deliver better outcomes for families living with special educational needs and disabilities. We aim to create a culture of participation and co-production across education, health, social care and the voluntary sectors. This means we're involved in all aspects of designing, commissioning, delivering and reviewing services as an equal partner. We empower our members to ensure that their voices are heard at a local, regional and national level. We inspire our partners by sharing good practice and knowledge. Our vision is for the best possible opportunities and futures for all children and young people with SEND and their families. So, what happens next? In order to be formally adopted, the NNPCF membership needs to vote to adopt this vision and mission. Our plan is that this vote will take place electronically and that each forum will have one vote. And we are planning to hold the vote in October and early November before our conference to seek your approval. And we're going to ask you the following question. Does your parent-carer forum approve the adoption of the following wording as the new vision and mission for the NNPCF? and that will be sent out to you electronically for all of our forums to vote on before our conference. So let's move on to the next section, which speaks to our objectives and our priorities. Our objectives are really about describing what we are going to change to make our vision and mission happen. So we cannot talk about our objectives in a meaningful way until we've got a very clear vision and mission. So we very deliberately did it in this order. And we should really think about our objectives and our priorities as the translation of our vision and mission into real tangible goals that really guides and steers the specific pieces of work that the NNPCF does. So again, how do we create our objectives? Really, the objectives in an organization are the intersection between two things. It's what our mission is, what we are here to do, so the section we've just been through, the language has been through, and then how that intersects with the things that are most important to our membership. So there are some things that will fall inside that will be very important to our membership, but actually doesn't fall inside our mission. There are going to be some things that are important to our that actually we could potentially do for our as a result of our mission, but actually isn't important to our membership. And so what we've tried to do is come up with the intersection of what our mission is or what our membership are telling us is important. And again, this slide shows you how we did our work. The plan here is, again, very much co-production. Our review starts and finishes with you, our members. So let me talk you through this. So we started with conference feedback, send surveys and regional meetings. So at the conference last year, we got some really strong feedback from you about what your priorities were, what was troubling you, what was working, what was not. We've analysed that and we've worked through that in some detail over the course of last year. You'll be aware that every 6 months there's the Send Implementation Survey, and so we took the information that you told us in the 7th and 8th surveys and we dissected that to come up with a set of priorities. And again, through our regional meetings, NNPCF steering group members are constantly talking to the membership, and we get a good idea of what the hot topics are through that. We then went away and we drafted a set of objectives and priorities. We shared this with our members and our stakeholders. So NNPCF steering group members have been out there and shared this with member forums in the regions. We then took that back in. We've redrafted our objectives and priorities to reflect your comments, and we've created something called talking points, and I'll talk more about that in a little while. And again, we're planning to review our objectives and our priorities with you at workshops at our conference.
So if we just unpick that a little bit, thinking as steering group members that we come to regional meetings, we talk to you, but before we could come up with these objectives, it was thinking about what are you hearing from your members, and what do you think are the priorities? So as Marunal's already shown, that we've done it 3 ways, which is through the conference, the Send survey and meeting you. So I'm just going to share some highlights from those different resources. So at last year's conference, we reflected on the number of questions you raised and what was important for you as the membership. And as you can see, participation was quite high, as we would expect, with regards to how participation is going on in your area. But just in case we are aware that some forums are experiencing a decrease in participation, and how do we carry that ethos forward? Another thing that you spoke to us about was regards to education. And not really a shock for any of us that transport came up within that, as we know it's a current debate at the moment, as well as SEN support. So those are some of the highlights you brought to our attention and that you wanted to come together as a collective to think about. Then if we just look at the surveys, thinking again around participation, and if I just pull out a few points, just half the parents felt they were largely or fully involved in decision making around their own provision. And that's thinking about that grassroots. How are we involved as parent carers ourselves in making decisions? And that came out at 51 to 49%, and that was quite a high percentage. If we reflect to what is said under the title of reforms, forums reflected that hardly any forums say joint commissioning is fully in place, and that remains one of your big issues that we need to think about how we approach as a collective organisation. Then, if we look under the title of education, post-16 provision came out as one of your high points to discuss. That there is great concern around this at the moment, and how it's working and what it's looking like, and it's kind of broken down into what you're feeling around providers and the local authority working effectively with providers. Then, if we just look under the other elements of education, early years came out quite high, provided you thought that early years was supported reasonably well, but there are concerns around early years assessments for families. Health is a conversation that we've been having for the last few years, and you have been raising with us. So with regards to health, 13% of forums reported that health is fully engaged in joint commission. So that's 13%. So we know there's a lot of work to be done. And with regards to social care, half of the forums reported changes to short breaks are being made, and only 5% of the expenditure is going up. So that's a reflection on how your members are feeling and how they're supported in a holistic way.
So we took all of that information, and as Lara said, one of the key elements was the everyday conversations we have with our membership in the regions. And we took all of that, and we framed some objectives and priorities for the NNPCF. We started with co-production, because everything we talk about, everything you talk about, co-production is front and center. That if we're doing co-production properly, then actually everything else will sort of look after itself. So if we're, and frankly, my personal opinion is that if individual co-production were working, if every single family were listened to and engaged in the way that they need to be and should be, then actually we probably wouldn't need to exist as an organisation, as local parent care reforms or as a national organisation. So we saw co-production as being the golden thread that runs through everything that we do, and we made that our first priority. So spreading the mantra, spreading the gospel when it comes to co-production. Secondly, we came up with a number of areas where we felt that the implementation of key policies and legislation needed attention, needed focus, and needed our feedback. And those areas are listed there, and I'll go through them in a little bit more detail in a moment. And thirdly, a theme that came up was that many forums do feel very precarious. Some of them are financially precarious, some of them are very dependent upon a handful of people, and sustainability, capacity, and capability is a constant thread of feedback that we hear. So that became our third objective and priority. So these are the objectives and priorities that we framed. This is the language that we pulled together around these. So we will continue to try and embed the culture and practice of co-production with all our key national partners and stakeholders by 2020. We will co-produce all key strategic and policy decisions about the working of parent participation with our member forums, and this webinar is an example of how we intend to do that going forwards. And we will champion co-production at a national, regional, and local level, and will support the regions and the local forums to co-produce. Moving on to what I always describe as the really hard content of what we do as the NNPCF. We identified 8 areas where we felt that legislation, the reforms or policies weren't being applied either as well as weren't being delivered, either as well as the legislation or the guidance said they should be, and they certainly are not being delivered as well as parents, carers and families expect them to be. So these are our areas of focus. Firstly, education, health and care plans. A key focus here from you is the quality of plans. That there's a risk that quality is being sacrificed to meet deadlines, and with the conversion deadline of April 2018 looming, there's a fear that things are being rushed through. The other big theme when it comes to education, health and care plans is the engagement of colleagues from health and social care continues to be patchy across the country, and that we are seeing that where plans do need extensive input from an extensive joint working, that isn't always in place to the extent that we would like it to be. Next up, preparing for adulthood. Forums are reporting that this remains a concern, it always has been, and put simply, families are often thought of behaving irrationally by insisting that our young people remain in education post-19. And the fact of the matter is that absent a meaningful supported internship offer, a supported work offer, a supported living offer, education is the only workable solution, and so people try to hang on to that. And we're giving that message very strongly to our partners that we do understand that education may not be appropriate for all of our young people post-19, but until they offer us something that really works, it's likely to be high on our wish list. Send support comes up again and again, including exclusions. And we've had some concern about the level of support that those young people on send support are offered, and the ability of various settings to actually support them properly. Joint commissioning comes up again and again and again, and I think there's a broader bracket here of joint working. There's forums do not believe that joint commissioning practices are fully in place or what they should be, and I think this is being borne out by the round of joint Ofsted CQC inspections at the moment, and one of the key areas that they are constantly looking at is the leadership around joint working. Local area inspections have been a huge focus for forums over the last year. They've been an overwhelming success from the point of view that they've shone a torchlight onto those areas that aren't working well, and we're getting really good support from Ofsted and CQC around this, and we would like to see them extended. We have also expressed very clearly to the regulators that they need to be very aware of the burden that local area inspections place upon forums, and what they should and shouldn't be expecting of forums, and how they should engage with forums before, during and after the process. Short breaks. Forums are reporting changes to short breaks, and this remains an area of focus for us, and we continue to. Mental health services for young people remains a major concern. I don't need to say a great deal about this because you'll all be aware of the attention this is getting at a national level. And then more broadly, engagement and co-production with health. And I think that it's fair to say that we've made great strides when it comes to our engagement with health over the last year or so. I think that two things have changed. I think that NHS England has really been pushing much more co-production with health down from the top, and Lorraine Mulroney has had a key role to play in that at NHS England. I think the other thing that's changed around co-production with health is the local area inspections, where local CCGs are being held to account. And we are seeing better engagement, but it's still nowhere near where it needs to be across the board, and we are feeding this back. And frankly, the message we're giving is that health came to the party late, and they've got some catching up to do. Now, these are the sort of 8 themes that have come out most strongly to us from our research and our work with you as our members. And what we're doing around these is we're creating a series of talking points documents, which essentially summarizes what we're hearing from our membership, and we're supporting those talking point documents with real examples and real evidence and real facts and figures. And we're going to be sharing these with you over the next few weeks ahead of our conference. And the idea being that going into our conference, we'll have a talking point document for each one of our 8 top themes. And then the final area that we've got an objective and priority is building the capacity and sustainability of parent care reforms. So we continue to increase our membership, and we've targeted that we'd like to have 100,000 members by the end of 2020, and that we'd like to see that 95% of local authorities have effectively functioning parent care reforms across all 9 regions have effective regional networks. So there's a number of things that underpin this, which we can talk to you more about at our conference, but this objective is delivered very much in collaboration and conjunction with Contact the Family. It says here, it should have also said Contact now, and we have a memorandum of understanding with them about this. Again, we have shared these objectives with regional meetings. So regional steering group members have been sharing these objectives with you, and we've asked for your comments, and we've got some really clear messages from you. Firstly, you agreed that all of the items listed here were priorities. There was no pushback on any of these items saying that we had the wrong things were on this list, or that we were saying the wrong things about them, any of the topics, and that nobody really disagreed with that these are the things we should be working on. The comments that we did get was that there should be some additional items that should be added to the list. And an example that's come up recently, and I touched on it earlier, was school transport as a separate item. And these did come up during our review in March, but they didn't quite make the cut. But we see this list of objectives and priorities as a living document, as a living list. And we anticipate that it will change on a year-by-year, month-by-month basis. And at our conference, we're planning some workshops at which we're going to be reviewing the list of our objectives and priorities with you, and basically trying to work out what the list for next year should be. And if there are things that you think are missing, please engage with us in our conference planning, and that will help us to get the list right, to sharpen it, to focus it even better for next year. So what happens next? At our workshop, at our conference, we're going to be running some workshops. Our conference is going to be 2 days this year, or a day and a half. The first day, the 27th of November, the plan is that that's going to be just for parent care reforms, for members of the NNPCF. So there won't be any of our partners there. So NHS England won't be there, Department for Education won't be there, previously Contact the Family won't be there. That is just for parent care forums. And on that day, we're going to do 2 things. We're going to bore you to death with our AGM, and then we're going to run a series of workshops. And what we'd like you to do is to tell us what you'd like the workshops to be about. And we're going to be running a survey, which is going to kick off next week, where we're going to be asking you to select from a number of topics as to what you would like the workshops to be held on. We'll also offer you the opportunity to add extra topics. So if you think that the list that we've come up with in conversation with you isn't the right list, and there's something else you want to talk about, you'll be able to tell us that as well. So let me just summarize what happens next from here on in, which is in this presentation, we've covered off on what our vision and mission is and what our objectives and priorities are. And we're going to be doing a webinar on the 18th of October where we talk to you about our organizational structure. as I said, next week, from the 20th of September to the 15th of October, we're going to launch a survey where we're going to be asking you about what our objectives and priorities for the conference workshops should be. What would you like to be on the agenda for the conference workshops? On the 18th of October is our second strategy webinar, which is going to talk to our organizational structure as the NNPCF. And then following that, we're going to launch an electronic vote. Between the 19th of October and the 18th of November, we're going to be asking you to vote on a number of motions that we're going to be putting to conference. So the idea is that going into conference, we'll have the results of the vote on the 27th of November, and hopefully we'll have a clear ratification, a clear agreement from our membership about what our strategy going forward should be. And then after the 27th of November, after our conference, we've just got the very simple task of going away and doing all the things that we have voted on. So some dates, so this is a really important slide because these are the dates that we'd really like you to look out for and put in your diaries and really make sure that you engage with your membership on to get their views so that we can bake this into our planning for the conference and then hopefully into an agreement for what our strategy is for the next 3 to 5 years. Then nothing else to say other than to open it up for questions. And I see some have come through. Lara, do you want to step us through some questions?
All right. Okay, then before I go on to the questions, Maroon, I'd just like to kind of just reiterate what you said in the last slide about this is your national network of parent carer forums, and this is your opportunity to shape what it looks like for the future and for future forums coming up behind you. So we're asking more out of you again, but if you could take this opportunity to shape what it looks like and for the future, I think that's really important for us to remember that it's not just come from the national team, but it's come from you guys who have ownership around this. With regards to questions, first of all, we've got a comment. RE Exclusions Ambitious for Autism have issued a campaign call for justice today following the survey results from members. I think we're all aware of that at the moment, but I wonder, Maroon, whether we need to kind of explore that as well at the same time, kind of what their members are saying. Yes,
and this is very hot off the presses. I was actually with the chief exec of Ambitious for Autism on Tuesday, and she gave us a little heads up that this was coming out, and so Maureen and I were aware of this, and yes, this again is a resource we'll look to, and we haven't yet drafted the talking point about exclusions and SEN support, but we will definitely reference that survey and also reference the work that Ambitious about Autism have been doing around exclusions when it comes to that talking point. I think there's also a pack that Ambitious about Autism have launched, have sent out, which I think we're going to be sharing through our membership, around our membership, which is about essentially support for parents who are concerned about the risk of exclusion for their young person.
Thank you. At the moment, we've got no more questions coming in from you all, but this will, whilst being part of this, is an opportunity to ask us questions directly. We can always come back if you have more questions after this and feedback our thoughts around what we've just been speaking about in the webinar.
And if you do have questions that occur to you or comments that occur to you afterwards, please do send them through to Lara and myself, and we'll of course get back to you and answer them. Maybe Lara, we just give it a couple of minutes and see if any more questions come in, questions or comments come in. We are very keen to have them, so please do send them through. This maybe if I fill the dead air there, our intention is that we would like pretty much everybody who is involved in running a parent care forum to see this webinar or talk to us about what we're doing here, because obviously we rely on, as Lara said, we're very reliant upon your input to create and shape and frame our strategy going forwards. And we definitely need your input when it comes to setting the workshop agenda for our conference, and we absolutely have to have your vote when it comes to setting our strategy. So please, those of you who have attended today, please tell people about this. Please tell people to go and look at this webinar, to view it online afterwards, and we'll be sharing links to this on Facebook as well, to make sure that we try and sweep up as many people as possible.
And think about how you could bring this to your steering groups, in your own local steering groups, and hopefully it will come out in the regional meetings as well. Okay.
I just had a note through from Anna Powell, the administrator, saying that we have no further questions coming through. So I think I'll wrap up there, but please do not hesitate to contact either me or Lara or both of us if something does occur to you. So thank you for attending with us today. A short questionnaire will launch at the end of this webinar, and as I said at the beginning, if you take the time to complete it, that would help us and Contact plan future training events as well. A recording of this webinar will be available on Contact's website, and an email will go out and let you know when it is. So nothing left to say other than thank you for joining us today, and please spread the word. Lara?
Thank you again, and we'll look forward to hearing your thoughts. Thank you.